Welcome to Unit 3, Video 6, and this is part of the unit on Greece. In this video, we are going to talk about the culture of Greece. We're first going to talk about what is known as the Golden Age of Greece, and then we'll talk about specific things that were achieved during this Golden Age and the people who achieved them. Now, a really important thing to note here is that while we talked about the Persian and Peloponnesian Wars both already, this Golden Age of Greece that we are about to discuss occurred in between those two wars. So the Persian War occurred first. Following the Persian War, the defeat of Persia by the Greeks, there will be a Golden Age in Greece, specifically in the city-state of Athens. And during that Golden Age is when we'll see a lot of these achievements. And then after the Golden Age of Athens in Greece, we will see the Peloponnesian War, which is the war that occurred between Athens and Sparta, in which Sparta won. And then we see the end of Greece when Macedonia comes in and takes over. So that's just a little time reference for you. So the culture of Greece. We'll start by talking about Pericles. Pericles was leader of Athens during its Golden Age. He was a wise statesman who led Athens through its Golden Age. Following the Persian Wars, Greece entered into its Golden Age, which lasted from approximately 480 to 430 BC or BCE. So it's about 50 years that this Golden Age lasted. Pericles was known to be honest and fair. He was a skillful politician, an inspiring speaker, and he had popular support for 32 years. So he ruled in Athens for a very long time. He had three main goals as he headed Athens. These three goals included strengthening Athenian democracy, holding and strengthening the empire, and glorifying Athens. And we're going to talk about each of these in a little more detail. So his first one, strengthening democracy. He introduced the idea of a direct democracy, a form of government where the citizens ruled directly and not through representatives. Pericles extended democracy so that most adult males had an equal voice. Now, in ancient Greece, it will be free adult males who are not foreigners, especially when we're talking about in Athens. But Pericles does try and extend to all adult males to have an equal voice, and so that not one person's is more powerful than the others. A direct democracy was possible at the time because the population was much smaller than countries' populations are a lot of the time today. Today, in the United States, for example, a direct democracy is not something feasible because there are millions of people that live in the United States, and millions of people could not be expected to vote on things on a daily basis. There are just too many people to make that feasible or possible. But in ancient Athens, there were much fewer people than there are today, and so it was more possible. His second goal was to strengthen the Athenian Empire, and to do that, he focused on strengthening Athens' navy. Again, those are the ships. It was the most powerful navy in the Mediterranean Sea, was Athens' navy. Athens' strong navy ensured the safety of its empire. And while they are going to be the strongest sea power, if you remember back when we talked about Athens and Sparta, Sparta was the strongest land power. So both are going to use what they're good at. And for Athens, they're good at building ships and training soldiers on ships. And his third goal was to glorify Athens, to make Athens a place that everyone wanted to go to make it the center of Greece, to make it a very popular location. He is going to rebuild Athens after the destruction of the city in the Persian Wars. You remember after the Battle of Thermopylae, the Persians make their way to Athens. The Athenians had evacuated onto ships by order of Themistocles, but the Persians did destroy the city. And so Pericles, after the wars, is going to rebuild Athens. And it's going to take a lot of money to do that. So during the Golden Age of Pericles, we've talked already about famous Athenian statesmen being Pericles. the fact that the Golden Age is a time of growth between the Persian and Peloponnesian Wars, and that his goals were really about rebuilding Athens, and constructing the Parthenon was part of that. And the Parthenon is a very, very popular symbol in Athens, a very popular historical building, ancient building. And we've discussed it already. It is located on the Acropolis, or that upper area in the city of Athens. Culture is an important term to understand. It is a people's unique way of life shown by customs, tools, art, and ideas. And Athenian and Greek culture was so great that it became one of the foundations or base ideas in Western civilization. Now, when we refer to Western civilization, in the time period that we're talking here, we are talking about Europe. So Western civilization in ancient times was Europe. So here's Greece, highlighted on the map for you already. Europe is going to be this area here. Okay, so this is as far west as the Greeks or anyone who was in Europe knew about at this time. They didn't know about North and South America, and so this was as far west as they knew. So this is what we consider when we say Western civilization. Sculpture was very important in ancient Greece. It set the standard of classical art. In sculptures that represented individuals, figures had no emotion. They were shown as graceful, strong, and perfectly formed, and they were very much the idealized human body in motion. A fit body, motion in terms of activity was very important in ancient Greece, which leads to the conversation about the Olympics starting there, which we've discussed already, and we'll discuss in further detail moving forward. But these are the basic things we see in all of the sculptures that were created regarding people that come from ancient Greece. Columns were first constructed in ancient Greece of these three types: the Doric column, the Ionian column, and the Corinthian column. So to the right here, you see the images of the three. A Doric is a very simple column. There's not a lot to it. When I think of Doric, I think of just an easy way to remember it, Dory from Finding Nemo, or Finding Dory. And she doesn't have a long-term memory, so there's not a whole lot going on in her memory. There's not a whole lot going on in the Doric column. It's the most simple of them. Ionian is the one in the middle, and that one has spirals at the top. You can think of those as eyes to help you remember it. Ionian, eyes, right? Somebody's eyes looking at you. And the third one is Corinthian, and you see it there on the image. It's the one on the right. It is the most detailed. You can think in terms of remembering it better. Maybe the word complicated starts with the C, so does Corinthian. Or if you think of caviar as being something super fancy, then that would work as well, because Corinthian is the fanciest of the different columns. So Doric columns are the oldest and simplest of the classical orders. They are vertical cylinders that are wider at the bottom. So you see an example of them on a building in the image here. Ionian are more detailed. On the top is a capital in the shape of a scroll. So again, they kind of look like they could be eyes. Easiest way to remember that one. And then Corinthian is the most detailed or complicated. Capitals decorated with leaves and scrolls. So again, you see an example of that. And you notice that this says that it is from the Pantheon in Rome. So Greece is going to be where a lot of ideas come from, and then they're going to spread and stick around for a while. So some of these things we will see again in Rome. You can see other examples of these columns in very important structures today, even right here in Washington, D.C. Philosophy is something else that came from ancient Greece, ancient Athens. Philosophy means lovers of wisdom. And philosophers who studied the way that humans think and understanding of the world, they believe two simple truths. The universe put us together in an orderly way and is subject to unchanging laws. and that people can understand these laws through logic and reasoning. So philosophy is all about logic and reason, and we will talk about specific philosophers a little further down here. So here's where we start the chart that is in your notes packet. If you see there are some blanks in the what column, you're going to fill those in. Again, they are underlined on the screen so that you can fill them in as we go. So contribution, this category tells us what we're talking about. The who tells us the specific people, and the what tells us what those specific people were known for. So in terms of drama was became very important in ancient Athens. Plays were put on quite often, and it was something that people went to do very often. Aeschylus is the first one here, wrote more than 80 plays. Sophocles is the second one here, wrote more than 100 plays. Oedipus is his most famous. Poetry, we see Homer. Homer is a poet. He wrote epics. Epics are long poems that tell a story. The Iliad and the Odyssey are two epics that he wrote. The Iliad is based on the Trojan War, hence the images here. The Odyssey, on the other hand, was based on the 10-year journey home for Odysseus after the Trojan War, which if you're not already reading in English class this year, you will be. There were two historians. Herodotus was known as the father of history, is known as the father of history. He's the first one to really think that maybe we should write this stuff down. Maybe it's important. So he's the first one that really starts writing history. Thucydides wrote the history of the Peloponnesian War. So much of what we know about the war between Athens and Sparta comes from the writings of Thucydides. Phidias was a sculptor. He created sculptures. The two most famous include the statue of Athena in the Parthenon that's located in Athens, and the statue of Zeus at Olympia. And that statue of Zeus is where the Olympics used to begin every single year, or every year that they were held. Scientists, we have Archimedes. Archimedes was known for estimating the value of pi, for law of the lever, and for inventing the compound pulley to lift heavy objects. So this is going to be important because a lot more things can be built to higher levels because of the compound pulley system. In science, we have Hippocrates. He is the Greek doctor known as the father of Western medicine. He starts medical schools in Athens, and today there is something called the Hippocratic Oath that was named after him that all doctors must take, that basically says that they agree to treat anyone and absolutely anyone who comes to them, regardless of race, gender, religious affiliation, political affiliation, anything like that. And that is actually named after Hippocrates. A number of ancient Greek surgical tools. On the left is a trephine, on the right a set of scalpels. Hippocratic medicine made good use of these tools. In mathematics, we have two individuals. We have Euclid, who opened a school for geometry in Alexandria, and he's actually considered the father of geometry. And then we have Pythagoras, who created the Pythagorean theorem, which is a part of geometry, and it's the idea that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So hopefully you have learned that, or you will be learning that soon in your math class. And then we have philosophers. We have Socrates, who taught about justice and truth. He is known to have said the unexamined life is not worth living. And he, because of his questioning and looking for justice and truth, he was actually put to death by drinking poison for the belief that he was corrupting youth with his teachings. And that is a representation of that. We also have Plato, who wrote the Republic. In his ideal society, all citizens would fall into one of these three groups: farmers and artisans, warriors, or ruling class. And finally, we have Aristotle. who questioned the nature of the world and knowledge, and he invented rules for logic and taught Alexander the Great.